for a planning study along US 42 from Bridgepoint Boulevard to Ken Carla Drive. And then lastly, University of Louisville's campus improvements. They're working on making better pedestrian connections, safer connections for students and the public around that 3rd Street, 4th Street multimodal corridor. And they recommended, the TTCC recommended the award of $2.43 million. So those are the STBG projects. Are there any questions on those?
Any questions? Are you gonna take this to the motion at this point, Nick?
No, I'm gonna hold off 3 motions. I'm gonna just review the projects first and then get to all 3 actions if you don't mind.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Okay, good deal. We'll take a quick look at the transportation alternative projects that are being recommended. Again, there were 6 that were submitted. All 6 can be fully funded. The working group simply had to work out which fiscal years the funds would be programmed in. And that level of detail was provided in your packet as well. Louisville Metro has 5 sidewalk projects. Bernheim Lane sidewalk and reconfiguration, constructing some new sidewalks on the northeast side, as well as the road reconfiguration. The request was for $374,000 and it is recommended. Blanton Lane sidewalk. This would create a continuous sidewalk on the north side of the street from Dixie to St. Andrew's Church Road for $1.13 million. Louisville Metro's Crumbs Lane sidewalk project will create 2 new sidewalks and rehabilitate another one in and around the Crumbs Lane Dixie Highway area for $621,000 federal. Another Gagel Avenue, I should say, sidewalk here would construct a sidewalk on the north side from Dixie Highway to London Drive and from London Drive to Manslick on the south side for $1.4 million. Louisville Metro's Newburgh Road sidewalk would provide a continuous sidewalk on the west side of Newburgh from Larkmore Lane to the entrance of the Louisville Metro Animal Services building. And then finally, the other portion of Mount Washington's multi-use historic trail project. This portion would fund the multi-use path on the west side of Old Bardstown Road and a sidewalk on the east side from Flatlick Road to Landis Lane. So these are the recommended awards that were provided by the working group and also recommended by TTCC. Let me back up real quick to the memo because we have a couple of things I want to clarify. We did receive a cost increase application from a Kentucky project sponsor at the same time that the project working group was reviewing these projects. And both the working group and TTCC have recommended the award of $189,000 federal for KYTC's Chenoweth Lane project. They needed a little bit more to complete that the right-of-way phase this fiscal year. And then the other thing is we actually, there's I think 4 planning studies that are being recommended. The amount of funding that's being recommended exceeds the threshold that's allowable under the project management process. I'll be asking for a separate action to approve a waiver that will allow us to program more than the 2% annually that the rules provide for. So before I ask for those 3 actions, I'll ask for them individually. Are there any other questions or comments? This is obviously a pretty big deal for the NPO. We don't do this all the time. Program $25 million out all the way through fiscal year 2025. So any questions or comments?
This is Matt, District. I have a question on the SG project, East Market, the $7 million range. I was under the impression it was 10 or more, I guess. So was that an update, or was there some other kind of match?
Matt, I don't know if it was just me, but I couldn't make out most of what you were saying. There was some.
I think he was saying, Nick, I believe what Matt is asking is this project's much more expensive than the $7 million we're showing federal. Where's the rest coming from? And you might see if you can pull up the match. I believe Metro was bringing several $million more than the 20%. Can you find that?
Yeah, that was my understanding as well.
Was that your question, Matt?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because we are having a little bit of a hard time hearing you for some reason.
Okay. I know we've got Dirk on the line. I don't know if I can try to pull up the exact documentation on the local match. Dirk, do you want to speak to that? The local match and the additional funds for this project?
Matt, we do have the local match that's required for the $7.2 million. Additionally, you know, we had the $1.5 million from the Bridges project that does need to be added into that total. We had some design changes that reduced the scope of the infiltration basins, and really we're not getting the dollars from the from MSD for a stipend. So we've revised the drawings. It's really reduced the cost of the green infrastructure of the project, and that's going to save us nearly close to $1 million there as well. So I can assure you I've reviewed the cost estimates that we've got available to us, and we have enough money with the 7.2.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Any other questions? That answer your question, Matt?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. Any other questions? Nick, do we want to take these separate in action separate, I suppose?
I think so. That's what we did at TTCC. I think that might be most appropriate. Just not to.
Okay, let's do that. Okay, the first motion I'll be requesting, motion to asking TPC to approve the waiver of the rules to allow more than 2% annual to be utilized for the program. I need a motion for that action.
Matt Minier makes a motion.
Okay, Matt, thank you. Second?
Second.
Okay. Any comments? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that motion does carry. The next motion would be requesting that TPC approve the cost increase for the right-of-way for the KYTC Chenoweth Lane project. Motion for that.
So moved.
Okay, Anita.
Second. Second.
Second, Jim Arbor. Okay, any questions? All in favor, aye? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Okay, the last action requested is the approval for the 12 STPG projects and the 6 MPO projects. Motion to approve that action.
So moved. So moved. Jeff O'Brien.
Jeff? Second? Who made the second?
Rick Tonini.
Oh, okay, Rick. All right, thank you. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, motion does carry. Thank you so much, Nick. We'll move on to item number 6. It's COVID-19 transportation impacts from Andy. Andy, you're up.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay?
Got you.
All right, let me try to share my screen here. Can everybody see my screen okay?
Got you.
All right, good. All right, so I'm going to talk for a few minutes about the impact that COVID-19 might be having on our both the traffic in our region, but probably just as impressively or as importantly, if not much more so, on crashes in our region. So this is a bit of an update from what I gave to TTCC. It was actually a lot of updated information from even what I gave a couple weeks ago to TTCC. So just a reminder what we're talking about today, or where we get some of this data from. You've heard me speak about, and perhaps others, about Streetlight. So KIPTA has a subscription to this platform called Streetlight. Streetlight provides origin destination data and other travel data. Who knew that we'd be tracking or wanting to use something like this to track traffic impacts of a global health crisis? Who knew? But it can, and it's done a good job of it. And I'll show you some of the results in a minute. On the crash front, we rely heavily at KIPTA on the 2 statewide crash databases. For those in Kentucky, we use the state police database, crashinformationky.org. In Indiana, they have what's called the ARIES database that we utilize. One of the things important to mention that is that what the date we've used kind of as the before and after date was March 16th. So March 16th, if I'm not mistaken, was the day that JCPS, if nothing else, was the first time they were out of school. So that's kind of the pretty clear before and after when things really started shutting down due to COVID-19, at least around here and perhaps around most of the country. So here's some of the headlines. And if you check nothing else out, check out this slide, I guess, today. So what we found using the streetlight data is that in early April, traffic levels, they really bottomed out at about 57% of what they were in that that early March baseline that we used. Okay, so 57%. So within a month, traffic was down on average by nearly half. Since then, we've got data now through early June. The early June data, there's a bit of a lag on it, but the early June data is most recent we have available to us. We're back up around 80%. In some of the rural areas, it looks like the rural areas are about even over 95% of that March baseline. Ohio River bridges, we thought that there might be a big difference there compared to the rest of the roads in the region. Not really. Those trends on the Ohio River bridges, despite things like governors saying, hey, if you can, stay in your state, the Ohio River bridge crossing trends they look like the rest of the roads for that matter. And these last two bullet points down at the bottom talk about the crashes. And so what we've seen is that crashes have dropped tremendously. Okay. So given the most recent data, it looks like crashes have dropped over 60%. So let's say nearly 2/3, while the traffic only dropped, currently we're down to 82%. So we're talking 20, 30, 40, depends on your time horizon in terms of the traffic numbers, but the crashes dropped far more than the traffic dropped. Okay. And then even more remarkably, I think this bottom line here is probably one of the most interesting data points I've seen in a long time, if not ever. So when we look at the crashes that have happened this year in the post-COVID-19 time period, that is March 16th through the end of June, and we compare that to last year, that same time period last year, we see that in the 5-county of KIPP-MPO region, there's just under 8,000 fewer crashes have occurred. About 12,000 last year, about 4,000 this year. 8,000 fewer crashes. Those crashes happened last year. We didn't go back further than that, but crash trends are pretty steady. So that's, we can assume that was about the case in prior years too. But 8,000 crashes disappeared. You might think there'd be a silver lining. The silver lining being that means we're saving lives because people aren't crashing as much. That is not true. Remarkably, that is not true. Despite having 8,000 fewer crashes in this region, we are at the exact same number of deaths in the whatever it is, the March 16th, mid-March to end of June time period, 3.5 months, I suppose. Same number of deaths have occurred, traffic fatalities. I think that's a really remarkable number. I'll go a little bit more on that in a minute. Here's the traffic. Here's a roller coaster ride we're on with traffic. And again, this is an update from what some of you that may have been at TCC a couple weeks ago saw, because we've got a couple time period updates. So again, this early March was that time was the baseline we utilized. Okay, and so what these lines represent is the traffic as a percentage of that baseline, that early March baseline, for a series of about 50 locations across the region. We've used Streetlight to track the traffic at each of those 50 some odd locations, and we track it on every half month period. That's the way the data comes, in every 2 month or 2 week or half month period. And so we've tracked it at the same locations to see where it's come from, where it's going, and ultimately where it's going, I suppose, but certainly where it's been. So what we've seen, and here it is. So you see in that late March, early April, where we bottomed out. So this number over here, where we're at 0.50, that means half the traffic occurred in a given time period as compared to the early March baseline, which we're saying was more or less, typical, more or less normal. So what we've seen since then, of course, is the traffic has begun to rebound. Okay, so in early late April was when it bottomed out. That early May time period, late May, throughout May, traffic increased by 12 or 15% each of those time periods. So we're talking 20 to 30% in May, and then now in June, it's back up another 10%. So it's really ramped back up. You can see, in case you're wondering, and a little bit more on this in a minute, if you're wondering what the one that's at the, we've kind of got something here going on where we've got a rural to urban. You could almost say the most rural sections are at the top lines. The most urban are at the bottom. We've got the top line, the top blue line happens to be I-65 near the in northern Clark County. Okay. Here's the graph depicting just the interstates only. Okay. For the most part, the interstates, the arterials that we use to be representative of traffic, the parts of town, the parts of the region, there's not a whole lot of differentiation. So that's true interstates too. They all dropped, and they all dropped precipitously. They all bottomed out. And it took about a month to bottom out, and now they're on the upswing. And so if you can see some of the colors here, you'll notice that some of the more rural sections, the sections in Oldham County and Clark County are kind of at the top in terms of how much they've rebounded. Again, if and when that line gets back to 1, that means we're back to the same amount of traffic in that time period compared to early March. Here's the Ohio River bridges. Again, you see there's nothing remarkable about this compared to the other ones. They followed the same trends as those other roads on those prior 2 graphs, despite, stay at home, stay in your state type of directives from the governors. Here, just by county, I think this is an interesting way to look at it. What we see here is that Jefferson County dropped the furthest. In other words, the trough was the lowest in Jefferson County than it was the other counties, and it's continued to lag the other counties. What we also show on here is beyond the MPOs. The orange one are the KIPTA Area Development District counties, the rural counties. The rural counties have bounced back the most. Okay, and then the suburban counties, Clark, Floyd, Bullitt, and Oldham, they're in the middle. So again, rural didn't drop as much and has bounced back closest to where it once was, while the most urban county, Jefferson, dropped the most and has continued to lag the others. So I don't know what to make of that, but I thought that was an interesting phenomenon that we're seeing here. Next, I want to get into the changes in the crashes. So that was all about the traffic. So again, the change in crashes was significantly more on a percentage basis than the change in traffic. What this graph right here shows the change in crashes in the pre-COVID-19 era, that is before March 16th of this year and post March 16th of this year. And since it's a different number of days, we show it by representing crashes per day. Okay, so that is to say that in the MPO region, the 5-county region, over the winter or January 1st to March 16th, we averaged 106 crashes per day. Once things started shutting down and we stopped traveling as much, this region only sees 44 to 45 crashes per day, a drop of 60 some odd percent. That's a remarkable thing. I can't think of anything, a year ago. What could we have done to decrease crashes by 60%? I don't have any ideas. That's a remarkable number, and it's region wide, it's county wide, county by county are similar. And again, going to the year over year comparison, again, 8,000 fewer crashes, but here on the next slide, 0% fewer deaths. You'll see that on crashes per day, we're still averaging about 1/3 of a fatality per day, 0.33. That is on this region's roadways. The average day, unfortunately we see, about 0.3 fatalities per day. Jefferson County even has more. There are more fatalities post COVID-19 shutdowns than before, despite all those changes I showed in those prior graphs in traffic. So really a remarkable thing in my opinion. So just getting in, here's kind of some food for thought, I guess. Nothing, maybe no more than that, but it is interesting to think what's the newer data going to show? Is the traffic going to rebound? How's it going to rebound? People going to continue to work from home, or are we going to start crashing into each other more often? Are we hopefully we'll quit crashing into each other and killing each other on the roads. Let's say that. How many impacts of these? How many of these are long lasting? Are we just going to bounce right back to where we were? Maybe not. How should we adjust? There can be impacts. If we're driving fewer miles, if we're driving fewer VMT, that's a direct hit to the Highway Trust Fund, short and long run, perhaps. There's going to be some adjustments that'll need to be made at some point, I suppose. And then if there's any other questions you guys want to talk about or have for me, or if you want us to take a look at some of the numbers in your community, I'm sure we can adjust some of the stuff we've done here and present it to you or give it to you at a later date and talk to you about it. So that's all I have. No approval, no actions necessary, but I hope this was informational. I hope it was informative for you guys.
Okay, thank you, Andy. If keep us up to date, as this moves forward to see how we do adjust. It's quite interesting. Any questions? All right, let's go on to number 7 then. This is a group projects, the safety category amendment. Amanda, I think this is yours, please. Amanda? I can't hear you.
Sorry about that.
There you go. Now you got it.
Yeah, okay. Mayor, I would like to ask the TPC to entertain the policy committee recommendation to increase the cost threshold for the safety improvement project category in our group project policy from $1 million to $2 million. And the group project policy is one that this group, that TPC approved in January of 2019. It is included in your meeting packet. The intention of the policy is to streamline how staff looks at projects that are proposed, vets those, and ultimately adds them to our planning documents. The policy identifies 8 project type categories. For each of those, there's this cost threshold. As another example to compare to the $1 million safety threshold that we have now, the roadway and bridge preservation and rehab cost threshold is $15 million. And these were set largely by just looking at historic projects. So any project that's proposed below those cost thresholds proceeds into our TIP as an administrative modification very efficiently. Anything above those thresholds are required to be considered through our amendment process, so a more formal, lengthier vetting, which includes formal public involvement. So essentially, we've utilized this policy over the last year. We've worked very closely with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, and now we've determined that a more appropriate threshold for that safety category is really $2 million instead of the $1 million. It will allow us to achieve the goal that as intended, but also to expedite more of those safety improvements that are not regionally significant, that are air quality exempt. Be more than happy to take any questions, and TPC approval is requested to increase that safety project threshold from $1 million to $2 million in our group project policy.
Okay, thank you. Questions, Amanda? Okay, well, let's go ahead and I entertain a motion then to approve this threshold from the 1 million to 2. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Okay, Keith, have a second?
Second, Jeff.
Jim, second? Any questions of Amanda? If not, all in favor of this amendment, say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Hearing none, motion does carry. Thank you, Amanda. Number 8 now, we're back up to the amendment for the Connecting the Kentuckiana 2040 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. I think, Nick, this is you again, is it? Nick needs to unmute.
Unmute again. Thank you.
There you go.
Just a quick little heads up about Amendment 2. So you guys approved Amendment 1 earlier, so we've got another amendment planned. It's kind of one that we're scheduling in conjunction with KYTC staff, as they have a new 6-year highway plan with lots of different project changes that need to be reflected in the TIP and the MTP. Originally, we had a deadline of July 31st, and additional time was needed. So we have moved back up pretty much a month for all of the activities. So project sponsors have until August 31st to submit new project applications or project changes that may be considered for the amendment. Again, these are major changes, things that impact air quality and whatnot. We'll conduct air quality conformity activities with APCD and our state and federal partners in September and October. We'll have a public comment period from October 19th to November 2nd with committee action. That committee action should say November of 2020. And hopefully federal review is wrapped up by the end of December. So this is just a heads up. We have updated we have updated this on our planning portal. Let me see if I can get there real quick, just in case anyone has any questions. They can always go to our transportation planning portal, go to guidance and resources, and then find the schedule for our amendments for 2020. And you will see that we have updated it a couple weeks ago, and these are all of the new dates. I can take any comments or questions at this time.
The comments to Nick? Good job, Nick. There's no action required here. Just keep these new dates in line if you would.
That's right.
Okay. Let's go on to number 9, fiscal year 2020 to the fiscal year 2025, the Transportation Improvement Program. Nick, you're the go-to person today. Go for it.
Yes. Okay. So this is one of our normal administrative modifications to the fiscal year 2020 to 2025 TIP. This is administrative modification 5. Please note we've come up with a little new format for these admin mods. Our table was starting to get stretched really wide with some additional information we provided. So we think this format is a little bit more clear. So you can see the project sponsor, KIPT ID, state ID, county, all these different kind of important data fields. Most importantly, down here at the bottom, what's the change to TIP? So hopefully this helps out, sponsors, federal agencies. I know they've asked for things like, what is that project's group ID, things of that nature. So we have 3 or 4 pages, actually make it 7 pages worth of administrative modifications. Most of them are to TARC's FDA formula funds and/or there's some KYTC changes. There's a bunch of new HSIP, Highway Safety Improvement Program projects that they've added. Again, no action is needed. This is just for information only, but I'm willing to take any questions or comments at this time.
Any comments to Nick? I do like the new form. I think it's a little easier to read and kind of pull together. I like it.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions? All righty, item number 10 is other business. Amanda, did anybody join on a public comment?
No, sir. Haven't seen anything.
All righty, if not, then at number 11, motion to adjourn. Matt made a motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
Got a second on Matt's motion. Thank you so much. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
We're ready to go. Okay, good deal. We'll see you at 2 o'clock then for the board meeting. It's been a good meeting. Thanks so much. Stay safe. Goodbye.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Later.
Bye.